About a month ago, I published a video about my recent cruise along the coast of New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts with American Cruise Lines on their ship American Eagle. My first draft of that video, which included every interesting video clip I shot on that trip, ended up being something like 45 minutes long, and that's way too long to hold people's attention on YouTube. So I went through it and I pulled out a whole bunch of material in order to trim the final version of that video down to a more watchable 24 minutes. Now, in today's video, I'm going to show you all that great extra footage that I didn't have time to include in that previous video. For example, in that previous video, when I talked about how I spent a day in New York City before the cruise began, I just shared one 6-second shot of Central Park. And that's a shame because I shot a lot of beautiful footage in Central Park. It was my favorite part of New York City. I didn't really realize until I was actually there how cool it was to have such a wonderful little oasis within easy walking distance of all the hustle and bustle of downtown Manhattan. And as a photographer, there was something so interesting about having this beautiful park butting right up against all the skyscrapers. Something that really surprised me was seeing all the turtles in one of the lakes. And as a baseball fan, I got a kick out of watching people play softball in Central Park. Another thing that I didn't have time to include in my original video was this time-lapse video I shot of our ship sailing up the East River through New York. After we sailed away from our dock at Pier 81 in Manhattan, and after getting a good look at the Statue of Liberty and the lower Manhattan skyline, the East River was the most direct way for the ship to get up to Long Island Sound, where we needed to go. The trip up the East River actually took about an hour or two, but a time-lapse video is a great way to condense that down to just a few minutes. You won't have a very good view of it, but on the right, we're about to pass Rikers Island, the famous prison. Now, when I flew into New York before the cruise, I flew into LaGuardia Airport. And ironically, this trip up the East River took us right by LaGuardia again. You're going to see here in the time-lapse a series of planes coming in from left to right as they make their approach and land at the airport. Up ahead, that suspension bridge we're about to go under is the Whitestone Bridge. It connects the Bronx on the left side of the river with Queens over on the right side. And as you can see up ahead, we've got one last suspension bridge to go under before we make our way out of the urban area and make our way into Long Island Sound. This is the Throgs Neck Bridge. It's the youngest of all the bridges spanning the East River. It's only 63 years old. Now we're looking at a shot from my drone in New London, Connecticut, where our cruise ship, American Eagle, was docked at a pier that was right next to a train station. Now, I'm kind of a train fanatic, so I loved this. Here's a video I shot with my drone that I didn't include in that video I made about the cruise because I figured most people probably don't get as much of a kick out of trains as I do. From the deck of the cruise ship, where I was controlling the drone, I heard a train horn and realized that there was a train coming my way. And since I didn't have anything else to do, I figured, what the heck? Let's chase the train with the drone. So this was just me having some fun. I knew I probably wouldn't end up using this shot in my video about the cruise, but how often do I get the chance to chase a train with my drone, right? So off we go. And luckily the trains don't go very fast on this particular section of track, so at the drone's top speed, I was slowly able to catch up to it. And in just a minute here, we're going to get a real nice look at this Amtrak Acela train going over a little swing bridge, which sits at the entrance to the New London Marina. Well, there you go. A very nice shot of the train, I think. But a little off topic for a cruise video, so it didn't make it into my original video. Another interesting thing that I saw in New London, which I didn't include in my video about the cruise, was this staging area that they have for wind turbine parts. These pieces here will be assembled together, you can see it better in this shot, to form the base that the wind turbine will stand on. You can see them assembling them together with those cranes. And in this shot, you can see the big blades that'll be used to harness all that wind offshore. I thought it was really interesting to see, and I guess that eventually they'll get loaded onto barges and towed out to the site of that offshore wind farm. It's all part of a collaborative project between Connecticut and Rhode Island called Revolution Wind. Here's another thing I spotted in New London that caught my eye. What a great idea, a fountain in the shape of a whale's tail. I need one of these in my backyard. In my cruise video, I talked about the Columbia-class submarines that are under construction at the General Dynamics shipyard in Groton, Connecticut. Well, there were 2 submarine-related shots that got cut for time from my original video. This one's the coolest. This is an actual nuclear-powered submarine heading up the Thames River to a facility where they do maintenance and repairs. And then in the town of Essex, at the Connecticut River Museum, I saw a replica of the world's first operational combat submarine, the Turtle. It was built out of wood in 1775, not far from Essex, and its mission was to attack the British Navy in New York Harbor in 1776. At the Connecticut River Museum, they have a recreation of a sailing ship from over 400 years ago. And all of us cruise ship passengers who had taken this excursion to the museum were going to get to go sailing on her. But there were too many of us to all fit on the boat at one time. So they arranged for 2 sailings and asked us to choose between the first sailing and the second. Well, I picked the second because I wanted to fly my drone to get all these aerial shots of the ship in action during the first trip. But just about everyone else wanted to be on that first sailing, so the ship was really crowded for that first one. And in retrospect, it was a great stroke of luck for me to wait for the second one, because by the time they got around to doing that one, there were only 5 of us cruise ship passengers who still wanted to go. So instead of being all crowded in with a bunch of other people, we had the pleasure of sailing on a very uncrowded boat. Now, I love sailboats, so this was just a really great part of the trip for me. Sailing on the Connecticut River on a real sailboat on a gorgeous summer day. By the way, as we were sailing, we spotted a bald eagle in the trees. I had not brought my big zoom lens along with me, so this is a horrible picture, but that's a bald eagle there in the trees. If you've ever explored my YouTube channel, you've probably noticed that in addition to a lot of cruise ship videos, I've also made a lot of model train videos. Kids in the 3 to 9-year-old age group tend to really love those videos, and it's not uncommon for me to get an email from some mom somewhere letting me know that her kid is my biggest fan. And while American Eagle was visiting Newport, Rhode Island, I got to meet one such kid. This is JJ from Massachusetts. His parents drove him all the way down to Newport just so we could meet in person. And he even brought me a present. See that little train in his hand in the photo? That's the Santa Fe Super Chief, my favorite train. He brought it with him to Newport so he could give it to me. How cool is that? Well, this is my favorite drone shot from the entire trip. It's a lighthouse on Rose Island in Newport, Rhode Island. I love this shot. I did include it in the original video. I want to just include it again here because it's so great. And while we're taking a look at it, I want to just mention that I get to do all these great cruises with American Cruise Lines at their expense because they like the publicity that they get from these YouTube videos that I make. And also because I give them a copy of all the photos and videos I shoot, and they're free to use those in any way they want. For example, the still photos that I shoot often make it into the brochures that ACL mails out to their past customers and prospective new customers. And I get a real kick out of seeing some of my photos in their brochures. But the ultimate is when one of my photos makes it onto the cover of one of their brochures, and that has happened twice so far. I shot this cover photo of St. Michael's, Maryland, with my drone, of course, as well as this shot taken in Norfolk, Virginia. So I'm always trying to shoot a photo that's so great that someday I'll see it on the cover of an ACL brochure. And here's one I shot on this trip that might have a chance. It's another drone shot, this one from Plymouth, Massachusetts. Believe it or not, this was my 66th cruise since 1996, and my wife has been right there with me for most of those cruises, but for this cruise she elected to stay home and hang out with our Cocker Spaniel, Carly. But to fill her in on all the fun I was having on this trip, I would text her pictures of interesting things I saw each day. For example, here's a nice shot of Central Park that I texted to my wife. Now, anytime I would run into a dog that looked anything like our girl Carly, I would text her a photo of that dog. Now, our girl is a Cocker Spaniel, and I didn't see any of those, but here's a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel I met in Sag Harbor. And here's a cute young Cavalier puppy that I also met that day in Sag Harbor. And a Springer Spaniel I met near Central Park in New York City. And since my wife is normally my meal companion, I would also text her pictures of things I was about to eat, like a slice of pizza I had at Ray's Pizza on 7th Avenue in Manhattan. It was fantastic. Here's some clam chowder I had in Sag Harbor, which I also loved. This was some brisket they served in first class on one of my flights. It had all the charm of a frozen TV dinner. I will give the brisket itself about a 3 on a 10 scale, but the overall meal was a 2. And here was an omelet and some hash browns I had for breakfast at a diner on Broadway in New York City. I'd have to give that one a 4. I had this pizza for lunch in Sag Harbor. I know it looks a little burned, but it was actually an 8. It was better than it looked. And finally, a burger from a restaurant in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Now, the fries were an 8, but the burger, probably only a 3 on a 10 scale. Well, that's it. Photos and videos that weren't quite good enough to make it into the travel video I made about my trip with American Cruise Lines through New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. An itinerary they call the Yankee Seaports cruise. If you're interested in watching my video about that cruise with only the best shots and none of the rejects, in about a minute, I'm going to put a link up on the screen that'll take you to it. But first, I want to offer you the services of my travel agent. She's a good one. Kaylin Gallagher. I book all my cruises through Kaylin. She's the owner of Ambrin Travel. I much prefer that to booking directly with the cruise lines. It's good to have a travel agent look everything over, review your choices, and make suggestions based on her experience. Now, if you're new to cruising, or if you're going to sail on a ship you've never been on before, or with a cruise line you've never sailed with, she can save you from making any rookie mistakes. So give Caitlin a call or send her an email when you're ready to book your next cruise. As we take a look at a pretty amazing sunset in Plymouth, Massachusetts, here's that link you can click on if you'd like to watch a pretty nice little travel video I made about my Yankee Seaports cruise with American Cruise Lines. I'm Jim Zim. Thanks for watching.